Let's take you back to one of the biggest stories this weekend in the Eastern Cape, the provincial conference currently underway in that province. Senior reporter Siphamandla Goge covering those proceedings for us. Siphamandla Goge, what is happening? Have today's proceedings started to get underway? What is happening currently?
Delegates are entering plenary, which is right on my right. They are inside. The majority of them is already inside. Only a few that are still outside. We expect that proceedings will get underway any minute from now. They were set to start at 8 according to the amended program from yesterday, but they did not start at 8 o'clock because they needed to validate and confirm all the details and the credentials of the voting delegates who are attending the 9th provincial conference of the ANC in the Eastern Cape. Yesterday there were issues that were raised about bogus delegates. There were allegations that there were ghost delegates, so they needed to clean the system, start from scratch. From outside in the morning, they were entering the conference venue as per their regions. They were being verified. A delegate had to produce a barcoded ID as well as a tag confirming that that person is very much eligible to attend this conference and to vote here, basically going through the verification status of each and every delegate. So inside plenary now, delegates continue to trickle in and they will start with the program. We expect that they will deal with the issue of the credentials. Oscar Mabuyane, who is the convener of the provincial task team of the ANC in the Eastern Cape, yesterday telling the media that they had to adjourn the conference due to the fact that they needed to deal thoroughly with the issue of the credentials. It's basically about it. The conference of the ANC is about the credentials. Without the credentials being adopted by conference, which technically signals the start of the conference, that conference can never proceed. You know, if I'm not mistaken, I've covered a number of ANC conferences, and the gist of the disagreements on or during those conferences will be the issue of credentials. They always fight and argue about credentials. Sometimes it takes hours and even days to resolve the issue of the credentials. It's basically who is here, who qualifies to be a voting delegate, what is the status, and then once they agree on those credentials, then you can get underway with the process then of nominating for the top officials and even voting. So for now, we have not reached that stage. We will commence with the closed session whereby the conference is expected to discuss and adopt credentials. After that, they can move to nominations and votings. Earlier on, I spoke to the NEC member of the ANC, who is the head of organizing from Luthuli House, Nomvula Mokonyane. She's also deployed, by the way, here in the Eastern Cape as an NEC member. I asked her about a number of outstanding ANC provincial conferences across the country as the Eastern Cape is convening this long-delayed conference. This is what she had to say.
You know, from the work that prepares for a conference, actually Limpopo is almost over 70%. They've run their BGMs, they've run their BBGMs, they've had their regional conferences. That is one of the provinces that we're also watching and learning from on how they've managed these processes. The next one is KZ, and their processes for the provincial conference are starting. They are only left with 3 conferences in their respective regions. We are all concerned about the pace of the 3 provinces we are talking about, the Western Cape, Northwest and the Free State, because those are run by teams that have a sole mandate of taking the provinces to conference. And they've been overtaken by the 2 very important, actually 3, because even Gauteng has met its threshold. They've been overtaken by constitutional structures who were ordinarily not even due for conference. And that calls on the NWC to reflect on this. There's a need to seriously reflect on that. We are discussing that as the subcommittee. We will make a presentation to the NWC.
And despite some of those issues that occurred during the credentials process, Siphamandla Goge, despite all of that, NEC members like Aaron Motsoaledi confident that things are going to be finalized quite smoothly at the end of the day.
They have no choice. They have to be hopeful, because if this conference collapses, that will be a big blow for the ANC as a whole. Remember, it's been postponed more than 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. It's a do-or-die conference in a sense that it has to sit within the constitutional provisions of the ANC. This conference has to be convened. Yes, it could be delayed due to the fact that ANC conferences are always delayed. They always argue and fight over credentials, but once they move, in some instances they move with speed. So once they adopt those credentials, then they can have an indication as to whether this conference will be a success or not. But without the credentials being adopted, that conference cannot be described as making progress, because without the credentials, technically there is no conference. So Aaron Motsoaledi is the convener of all NEC deployees of the ANC to the Eastern Cape. There are a number of NEC deployees to this province. You talk about Ronald Lamola, you talk about, if I'm not mistaken, Senzo Mtunu is also part of those deployees here to the Eastern Cape. Aaron Motsoaledi convenes all of them. But for this conference, that team has been beefed up to include other members such as Tony Yengeni. There are other NEC members such as Dakota Lekwete who are here. So Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi's responsibility is to report to the NEC of the ANC to say the 9th elective provincial conference of the ANC in the Eastern Cape was a success. If it fails, he has to give a detailed account of why it failed. So he has to be hopeful, because he is the one who has to report to the highest decision-making body in between conferences of the ANC, that is the NEC, to say this is why it succeeded or this is why it failed. But for now, he is hopeful. He is of the view that once they adopt the credentials, they will be able to make headway. It's delayed, this conference. It's been extended by a day. We expect that ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa will wrap it up tomorrow. But let's take a listen to Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi.
It's not registration. Registration is over, it's finished. What we are doing now is to make sure that the people who come into the conference are all registered delegates who are authorized to vote. Because if you remember yesterday, that hall was full. There were many more people. Some were just ordinary guests, others were ordinary supporters, and it caused us problem. Now we are going into a closed session of adopting credentials and nominations and going on with the conference. So you need only people who have been finalized on the list signed by the Treasurer General, who is now acting as in the STO's office, to say these are the delegates who must vote in this conference. And so we don't want any other person within the vicinity or within the hall. And that's why they stopped here. As you can see, there are tables here. Each table has got a list of delegates from a particular region. They are going to read their names, give them a wristband, and they go in and check their tag, and then they move into the conference. Then we'll start.